So, as a small child, my father, my biological father, was institutionalized for mental health issues. He was diagnosed schizophrenic and bipolar and a whole bunch of other diagnoses. And I sort of hooked into how similar I am to him. He, I believe, was incredibly psychically gifted, tapped into something much bigger than what we could see, and he was labeled crazy. And I got caught in a loop of thinking that because I have so many qualities that are like him, that I was crazy too. And I started to really, really go deep and into these dark places of fear, of self limiting beliefs, and felt completely out of control over a number of different things in my life. And the lack of control was like, okay, well, what am I in control of? And so it manifested as an eating disorder that got very far out of hand. In that period of time, they diagnosed me bipolar. Then they were like, no, you're not that. You're borderline personality. And then they were, no, you're BPD2 and you're this and you're that. And they were giving me all these different diagnoses and trying to prescribe me the right medication. And I had it. I reached my limit. I told my parents that I was unwell, and they were kind of like, yeah, that's, you know, is what it is, I guess. And it was a desperate cry for help. And they weren't hearing it. And so I thought, okay, it's too hard. I can't live this life. It's never going to be different. It's always going to be suffering. I've known so much suffering in my life. My childhood was very difficult, having a father who was in and out of institutions, in and out of my life, in and out of my reality. And then my mom remarried. We had a blended family. There were lots of complexities in my life from very, very young. And I just didn't see a way out. So I took all the pills and I swallowed them down and thought, I'm out. I'm done. And I ended up calling 911 because I told my brother, come and get my dog. And he said, I'll come and get her if you'll call 911. So I did. And the next thing I remember, I was in the hospital and they told me that I'd been gone for 11 minutes and that they resuscitated me and brought me back. And it was, in returning to my body, I was so peaceful. And then I realized, oh, I have a lot of work to do here. And I started to really understand how much, those thoughts were coming up about taking my own life, how present they were. They were in everything. I'd be standing waiting for the subway, there was the thought. I would be sitting on my couch, there was the thought. I'd have a disagreement with somebody that I care about, there was that thought again and again and again and again. And I really didn't notice it until post NDE. I received a healing, an energy healing, and that really, really, really woke me up to how much those thoughts were there for me, and all the different places that dominoed into my life. Other ways that, like, that one thought of I can't do this would show up in so many parts of my life. I would self-sabotage jobs. I would self-sabotage relationships. I would get in my own way again and again and again and again because I was like, I can't do this. It's been hard. It will always be hard. And because it has been and it always will be, it's not worth trying. And that cycle went on and on and on. And even post NDE, it still took a lot of unpacking and therapy and spirituality and lots of different healings and modalities and meditations and all kinds of things for me to understand that it's possible to have a life that actually did not include those thoughts at all. And then once I invited that in, I was like, okay, this is maybe possible. And in allowing, then it became more possible, and the more possible it became, the further I got from those thinkings, those kinds of thoughts. And then eventually it just didn't come up at all. And now, if and when it does, I'm always like, I know you. You don't go here. Go away.
So, did you remember what you experienced when you were on the other side?
Yeah. A lot of my experience on the other side was peace. I often, say since I've returned, I say that time is fake, and it's because I really understood that when I was on the other side. It was like time was infinite, and it was also momentary. As I could have been gone for eons, and I could have been gone for moments, and it was 11 minutes, but it was also forever. And I started to really have this experience of like tranquility that existed beyond the body. That it was like going home to something that my soul had always, always yearned for. This feeling of being held, being supported. Everything was white and bright and light and airy and possible. There was just this feeling of like infinite source connection to everything that was, and also just a feeling of like exhale, that, a feeling of being exactly where I needed to be, but then also knowing, wait, hold on, it's too soon. I'm not really supposed to be here yet. And I could feel that when I was there. I could feel that I had written this, the script was written different than I had tried to rewrite it. And so back in I went. I was like, all right, I guess I'll go back. And when I did, it was a clear choice for me. It was a very, very clear choice. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And I think you've mentioned earlier self-sabotaging, jobs, relationships, and I think it's so difficult to see the line between those people weren't right for me in the case of relationships, or those jobs weren't for me, and recognizing that, and recognizing, hold on, I'm the problem. I'm the one that's always messing up. If you were to give advice to anybody, how do we distinguish? If I were to tell you I'm in a job that I hate, or that is just not fulfilling for me, or a relationship I don't align with, what would you ask me to get to the understanding, am I self-sabotaging this, or is it truly a relationship/job that does not align with me?
Yeah, I think, in either case, whether it's, a relationship, a job, a friendship, maybe it's just even a thought pattern that you're stuck in, self-sabotage is often let's use the context of relationship. You might be in a relationship that is actually serving your soul, but there's something in that relationship that you desire that you're not asking for. And so the need not being met and not asking for that need to be met, you are self-sabotaging. You are not asking so that you don't get fulfilled, so that you can repeat the cycle that probably started with your parents, that might have even started lifetimes before and is genetically encoded into your DNA. And you are repeating the same thing over and over again because 95% of our thoughts have already been thought before, and we don't know how to recreate the neuroplasticity on our own. We default to, I know this, I'll do this. And, to understand whether or not you're self-sabotaging or not, the question is, are you doing all that you can do to receive what you need to receive? Are you being a jerk on purpose so that you'll have that same argument over and over again? Are you avoiding feeling your feelings? Are you numbing out? Are you suppressing your emotions? Are you projecting your emotions? Like, there's lots of different ways that we show up, that have us stay in cycles of comfort. And now I don't mean comfort as in it feels good, but I mean it's comfortable. We know it's familiar. And so the familiar, we're always going to choose familiar because the safety in staying is much safer than the challenge of changing and leaving. So even in a job where you're like, I'm not fulfilled in this job. Okay, maybe you're not making enough money. Maybe you're working too hard at your job. You're giving so much and you're not getting what you need back. Well, if you're not talking to bosses about deserving more money and standing for it, if you're not actively seeking other roles that might fulfill you in other ways, if you're not creating supplemental incomes with passion projects and doing things that do fill your cup when you're not on the clock, if you're sitting in front of Netflix when you get home at the end of the day and you're just like, drinking your wine or smoking your J and numbing your brain and you're like, I don't feel fulfilled. Like, yeah, babe, because you're not doing fulfilling things. You're not being in nature. You're not tapping into the things that you love to do. You're just like, I'm too tired. Well, yeah, then you're going to be stuck in this cycle. You are self-sabotaging. Turn the TV off, feel your feelings, create art, dance, be in your own energy, be with the people that you love. And if you're with people in your home that you don't love, set new boundaries, demand what your limitations are, stick to those boundaries, and then watch. The things that are not for you, everything is energy. Everything. Everything is a vibration. So if you are allowing your vibration to lower to what other people are vibrating at, you cannot. They got to choose to come up. And if you're up here and they're down here and you keep dropping your boundaries so that you can make them feel good because you're just trying to people please or you don't want to disrupt the peace or whatever it is, you're going to keep staying in those habits over and over and over again. And only you can drop down. They cannot rise up unless they choose. So if you're self-sabotaging, you're dropping down, you're lowering and lowering and lowering, and in the way of your own vibrational alignment with higher, 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 which is really where we're trying to go. We want to raise the energy. We want to raise the frequency of the self, of the relationships, of the jobs that we do, of the things that we're fulfilling, and of course, of the whole planet, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I love it so much that you talked about boundaries and, about just respecting your space and understanding yourself. And I think also going within to understand what's really the problem. I have to say, I used to have this pattern in relationship that you defined perfectly, which was I wouldn't ask for things, and I would be so upset. Like the stereotypical woman, what's wrong? Nothing. I'm fine.
Right. Read my mind or you don't love me.
Exactly. And then I would just go into another room and cry and be like, why doesn't he love me? But how could anybody know what would make me feel loved if I don't share that, if I just expect people to know or to think in the exact same way that I do? So it was a pretty difficult pattern to break.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, it's not supposed to be easy, right? Relationships with other people are so hard. We're all living, as we've really come to understand, in our own energetic worlds, in our own universes, really. And we have all these things that are happening on the inside, experiences that we've experienced, things that we've known, things that we've, had to overcome in our own lives. And overcoming those things means that you have to invite other people into your world and figure out not only how to invite them in, but how to value yourself enough that you can say, I'm worthy of receiving this thing. Because in the reality that we've been in, everything is lack. Everything is you're not good enough. Every single commercial on TV, on socials, everywhere in the world, it is you don't have this, you don't look like that, you haven't done these things. This person's winning on that and you're losing. This one has that much money, this many children, they're doing all these things. These ones are traveling and you got nothing. How's that for you? And you're like, cool, I don't deserve anything. But where the rebellion is in allowing yourself to be like, no, I'm here on this planet and therefore I deserve to have my needs met, period. And then letting that be a non-negotiable, that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of muscle building because it's not easy.
For sure. I concur with that. So tell me, how did you end up being the person sitting with me today talking about boundaries and talking about, not denying oneself and being who you're meant to be and not letting yourself be pushed into these boxes? Because I know that your past was filled with trauma. And as you said yourself, before your NDE, you were being labeled different mental disorders. So I could imagine you would go into those boxes and be like, oh, they said I have this, so this is what I am. I am a bipolar patient. I am this kind of a person. So what was the journey like from there, and from having the NDE and realizing, oh goodness, I'm back here, didn't want to be, to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think I started drawing some of those boundaries pretty early on after my NDE. I was like, I gotta do this. I gotta go to treatment. I'm only gonna do it one time. And I need to go through this process. And as I went through it, I got into the world of spirituality and of subtle energy. And I started to get deeper and deeper and deeper on that journey. So on my father's side, his mother was always into astrology. She is incredibly giftedly psychic, even though she will never say it that way. She'll call me and be like, I was just thinking about you. And I'm like, no, I was just thinking about you. Like, we do this all the time. And her mother was the same way. And so when I started to understand what that lineage was about and how I could relate to that part of me, which was, 50% of that double helix, how I could relate to that in a way that was more compassionate and less judgmental, because the same judgments of saying that I was a bipolar patient, I was a this patient, a that kind of issue, a this kind of issue, I'm an eating disorder patient, I'm whatever it is. My father had so many of those diagnoses himself. And I was like, but wait a minute, he was a person. He was like a human being with all of these thoughts and feelings and expressions and parts of himself. And how do I find compassion for me and he? And what's that missing link? What's the thread between us? And I was like, there's an energetic spiritual connection that he and I hold, because we didn't have a physical relationship. He was in and out of institutions. I knew it wasn't healthy for me, and so I had drawn the boundary. I didn't want to have him in my life. So my relationship to him was really like my relationship with spirit. He was non-existent to me. And as I built and strengthened my relationship with spirit and with his spirit, even though he was still in a physical body, he is still in a physical body, my relationship to him is to his spirit, to the part of him that is, godly. And so I started to understand more about my own spirit, my own energy, and spirit and the universe and the consciousness metaphysical world that we are in. And the deeper I went, I started to get really, really deep into astrology, really, really deep into divination and into meditation. And I started to really, really, really hone the skill of what does it feel like to work on the mental plane and to change my thoughts. What can I change? What can I shift? What can I transform? What can I transmute? And the more I did that, the more I found people coming to me and being like, what are you doing? What's different about you? What are you doing that I need to do? And part of my gift that activated really intensely, I could always, from a very young age, connect with crystals. I could hear them. They would sing me songs and tell me stories. And I blocked it out because that whole half of my lineage was my father's lineage. His father and his mother's father both collected crystals, and they would sing to me as a child. And then I was like, no, not that side of the family. Nope. And as I let myself open up, it was like, oh my gosh, those connections, that capacity for inner ear hearing, that listening, that inner listening was magical. And so I was like, well, what does it feel like if I let myself tap into it? And then suddenly I was like connected after my NDE with the gift of mediumship and being able to communicate what other people's loved ones who had passed had to deliver to them. And I was suddenly reading people left, right, and center. And I was, pulling out my oracle deck on the street and reading strangers. And then I was, booking clients and starting to be like, oh, maybe I can offer you some solution to the problem that you might be having. And I could just really let myself see what they couldn't see. I could see, as I often say, into their blind spot and help them to understand what is that thing that you keep veering into that keeps happening over and over and over and over and over again that you actually don't need to keep doing in this lifetime, and you can break it if you want to. And so I got even deeper in my practice, and now it's been almost 15 years of practicing and in the practice of helping people to understand the thoughts you're thinking are choices. And you don't have to choose the thought you choose innately. And when you train your brain to think differently, you can have an entirely different world. Now I live where I love what I do. I get to do what I love. I'm fully living in my truth. I express myself the way that I need to express. I set healthy boundaries. When the boundaries aren't respected, I set even healthier boundaries, and I navigate through the world with far more empowerment and resilience to keep pushing through that, no matter what's happening in the world outside of me, and a lot is happening in the world outside of me, I don't have to be the victim of it. I can choose thoughts that actually empower me to be like, what is this teaching me? What am I learning? What is the opportunity for me, for my family, for my loved ones, for my community? What is the opportunity there when these challenges are arising? My father, being mentally ill my whole life, offered me the opportunity to talk about mental health and spirituality for the rest of my life. Thank God I suffered through that as a child and didn't choose to suffer from it as an adult, right? And so that to me is what resilience is, and that's what I do in my practice. So I guide people psychically through all kinds of different things in their lives. I have a program called the Resilience Revolution, where in a group container we work through things, and one-on-one we have the opportunity to go even deeper and look at your astrology chart. Who were you designed to be? And then what do you keep doing that gets in the way? And how do we stop you from doing that? And what are the tools you can use every single day in your life to move beyond who you've been being and into the you that you actually enjoy spending time with, and who sets those boundaries and feels good and lives, resiliently and in joy and in abundance and all the other yummy, juicy, good things that we want to live in,
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I often think of, you've mentioned at the beginning, you've had this thought that kept popping up all the time that was, I can't do this. And I very much understand it because I felt it so many times. I think the key for me was taking action despite of that thought or whatever I felt about it. But what it often leads me to think is I would have thoughts of, oh, I can't do this. Or if there's something that I want, oh, but will I be able to get it? And that's self-doubt. Whereas I was listening to a podcast with this politician that is running in the election, and I will not say the name because we're not talking about politics.
Yeah.
However, he was so convinced, 1,000% I could say, that he could solve anything. And he had such confidence that, of course, it's a done deal. I just have to make a phone call. I would do that. Of course I can. And I was thinking, that's such a difference that when I'm presented with something new, I'm thinking, oh goodness, could I even? And this person on the other side, probably whatever you were to tell him, he'd be like, of course I can. And those are two different thoughts. And for sure, they're never 100% accurate. Not in my case, not in his case.
Correct.
Because you can't be. But I'm thinking there's much more benefit in leaning more towards his side and thinking, well, of course I could run a marathon. I mean, I just need to put my shoes on. Of course I could. Of course I could write a book. Of course I could be an actor. Of course, why wouldn't I be able to? Because then I think you're giving yourself the chance instead of just killing the idea before it even started, before you even wrote a line. You're saying, no, how could I possibly write a book? I've never written anything. What are your thoughts on these two different mentalities? And if you had to choose one for yourself, what would you prefer?
Yeah, I love this question so much. I'm like bursting smiling because this is my favorite. Um, as a Pisces sun, your girl loves some delusion. I love a little delulu. Clearly, I mean, that's how I got diagnosed with all the crazy. Um, I think that this whole reality that we see, all of the atoms of this are make believe. We see 1% of the known universe. So the limit of your mind saying, no, I can't run a marathon is a lie. Just like so are the limits of the things that you think are real. And so when you live in delusion, now I want to say, obviously, sometimes that can lean into, all the way crazy. My father had delusions that he was having, lunch with the president and then going to have dinner with the Queen of England. Neither of those things happened. It was delusional, and that delusion was harmful. So harmful that I had to set boundaries that I was like, nope, that's not real. And I can't trust what's real in your presence, so I need to draw different boundaries. But some of that delusion has also created everything in existence. Before this water bottle was invented, somebody thought about the water bottle. Somebody thought about, okay, it's going to be a yoga roller and it's going to be, also a water bottle. And somebody could have been like, that's crazy. It's going to be too heavy. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. When people thought about the internet, people were like, what do you mean the whole world could connect? And now we're just like, yeah, it's the internet, whatever. We don't think about these things. Even things like tables and chairs. Once upon a time, somebody was like, I don't want to, I need a flat surface. And they're like, flat surface? What for? And then suddenly, across the world, we use flat surfaces, right? It's like all these things that that have been invented started with a little bit of delusion. And Pisces is really about this. It's a very interesting part of the chart. It's the 12th house. This is delusion, endings, institutionalization, and like that dreamy world where we invent possibility. And then rebirth starts with Aries, right? The beginning begins again. So for me, I'm like, bring as much delusional energy into your life as possible, but stay in the boundaries and the confines of actual like sanity. And so, this is why I'm not a love and light spiritual guide, because a lot of those people get a little too far into the delusion. They're like, oh, you're broke. You just like have a broke mentality. Like, just think better thoughts. And I'm like, nah, babe, the whole system was created for a lot of people to suffer. Like, that's a real thing. We can't just like ignore that. But how it shows up for each individual in the system is entirely up to you, whether or not you're going to be delusional enough to believe that it's possible for you to have a different life, even if you were born into one that was full of different kinds of hardships and different kinds of suffering. It's like finding that fine line between delusion and, reality that actually helps us to create new things. Because yeah, maybe it was delusional that a water bottle could also be a yoga roller, but hello, here it is, right? And so when you have the faith and the belief in source and in this infinite possibility of the quantum sphere to manifest anything into physical reality that you desire, especially in a world where we're like starting to lean on AI and all these other things that like, you don't want to do that task. AI will do it for you, babe. You just start focusing on the dreams you want to create, start focusing on the things that you want to do. And if you got to like hold on to something delusional while you're still doing something practical, all the better, keep the job that you maybe don't love, that isn't serving you, and build that thing on the side so that you can start to move fully into the delusion that becomes your reality, right?
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I'm a big fan of just anything is possible, but you have to, I think as long as you take action, taking aligned action, and you never know where it's going to take you, because it never takes you where you thought it would take you.
Why are you enforcing a limitation? It's very Saturnian. Why are you forcing a limitation on me that I don't have an understanding of? And, we learn through experiences, right? We learn through how things happen to us, and then we create our reality around that. So you can tell yourself, I've never run a marathon before, right? And then you put your shoes on and you run a kilometer and you're like, whoa, I did that. That was an experience that I actually had. And maybe your limitation only lets you run 3 kilometers, not a whole 5K. But actually, most of the time, you build up the endurance over time for things. You have to build the neuroplasticity, build the body, right? And so trying to enforce your perspectives, your views, your fears, which is what parents are doing. They're afraid of their child getting hurt, which is valid. But sometimes your kid needs to fall hard in order to have the experience of, oh, wait, there's a reason that this is being told to me. There's a reason that that I'm choosing this, right? And we're all here for different karmic reasons, to learn different karmic lessons. And some of us go a whole lifetime having never gotten burned. Good for you. I get injured all the time. And I was, as a kid, I used to play with fire. I definitely got burned. I'm like, all kinds of things. And so we all are here for different experiences. And if your kid is meant to, get burned on the stove or whatever, other thing happens in reality, sometimes we lose loved ones quite young. Sometimes, terrible things happen, whatever it may be. All of those things, I believe, are destined. They're written in the stars, and they are meant to happen for one reason or another. And the reason is always because there is a lesson, there is a why, there is something that you are meant to experience, and it's not to drop you down into a terrible depression and misery. It is to help you actually raise the vibration based on your experience. So the longer you stay in the victim of it, I could still be living a life where I'm, my dad was this, and now I'm like this, and I'm depressed, and I can't cope, and I'm in and out of my own therapies and in and out of my own, dependencies and codependencies. But I'm really moving as far away from that as possible every day of my life, because I don't want to live in that victim space, and it's a choice. It really is a choice.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you're saying it is a choice, because I see so many people every day that still live in that victim space, and it feels so difficult to crawl out of. Especially when people have gone through things that most of us haven't experienced, then you almost want to say, well, you're so entitled to feel that way. But on the other hand, I don't think we're doing ourselves any favors when we're only pushing ourselves to the boundary of our trauma, and where our whole identity becomes, well, this is what happened to me. So to understand me, you need to understand this thing. And especially in your case, that was so strong, right? Because you've been labeled with different mental disorders when you were younger, eating disorders. So it would be so easy to say, well, no, my dad's family's crazy, so I'm crazy, so I have all of these labels. And instead of those being labels assigned to you in different periods of time, you could just wear them and be like, no, I am those things. And then they become your identity. So then you strive to act in accordance to what you think your identity is.
Yeah.
So how do we begin to break from that victim mentality? How do we create our own identity? And does it mean forgiving the trauma that was afflicting upon us?
Definitely. Not only, and that forgiveness begins with tolerating it, like allowing this did happen, it was this way, and then validating the difficulty of it, validating how, I didn't deserve as a child to have the things that happen, and it was difficult, and I do show up the way that I do show up, sometimes like a victim, and that is normal based on the experiences that I have had, and it doesn't mean I have to choose it, and it's okay when I do, and I'm whole and complete even when I, quote, make bad choices. Those things, it's a practice, a really, really big practice. And, the piece about, my brain is farting. You asked me, sorry, ask me again.
How do we begin to break out of this victim mentality, and do we need to forgive?
Yeah. So in order to break out of that, you have to allow what is. This is why meditation is the solution, because meditation, the game of meditation, is not to clear the mind. It is to allow the mind, to allow that your thoughts are 95% repetitious, and to allow that they are. Allow that, oh, there I am ruminating about that thing again. Oh, there I am traveling to this other thing that I think about. Oh, there's that thought about work. Oh, there's that thought about my partner. There's that thought about my mother. There's that thought about my dad. There's that thought about this cousin. Whatever it is that comes up over and over and over and over again. Just noticing is how we break it, because until you can notice that the feeling of being a victim is the way that you are being, until you notice that you're having those thoughts, you cannot change them, because they're literally just there unconsciously running in the background. And so if you're not sitting and observing them for 11 minutes a day, you don't have to sit for an hour, although an hour would be great. But when you notice the thoughts as they're coming up and not judging them, not condemning them, not trying to change them. I always say, like, point at the thought in your mind like Waldo. You've noticed it. You're like, I know that dude. There he is. There's that thought. One more time. Cool. And then turn the page. Believe me, Waldo's on the next page. That thought will come back. But you don't need to stay stuck on it. So as soon as you notice, oh, there's that thought again, you're allowed to turn the page. You're allowed to let that thought travel on down the river and just keep letting the river flow, keep letting the mind go. And then once you have the conscious awareness after practicing over time, you can be like, okay, I don't really want to think that thought actually. I would like to think that thought a lot less. But until you know how frequent it is, you don't even know that you want to think it less. So it's really, really, really about noticing, allowing, tolerating, and then accepting your own enoughness, that if you really believe that you are enough, you would recognize that staying in the habit of being the victim immediately tells the universe, yourself, and the people around you, yeah, I'm not good enough. Don't worry about me. I'm just going to be a victim forever, right? And in staying that way, you will keep having experiences that will make you the victim.
That's so, so true. That's the thing. People that are in that victim mindset, they keep being the victim in new situations.
Yep.
That's what I've noticed. It's always, but it's me. It is me. Everything just happens to me somehow, and it's just this matter of thinking. And I often think, well, can you turn it around? They're like, no, I can't, because it's me.
It's funny. I have a friend who talks about a very, very, very traumatizing experience that she had when she was young. And the mindset work that she has done to transform that thought is exceptional. Not only is she relating to herself, her younger self, she's reparenting herself, but she's also relating to the person who did the terrible thing to her, with love and compassion, from an understanding that we are all in this reality to some extent or another deeply suffering, deeply. And the systems are created for us to suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer. And in the old world, it was hurt people. But the beautiful thing about the new world is that healed people heal people. So if you're surrounding yourself around a lot of other people who talk about how hurt they are, get new people in your life. Bring people into your world, or go and find people in the world who are talking about healing, who are talking about evolving, who are talking about changing their mindset. And, they're imperative things. This is why I do what I do, because I believe that there needs to be more containers and energetic, spaces and physical spaces where we are focusing on how am I healing? How am I growing? What are the ways that I'm being that I know I'm sick and tired of feeling these things? What am I doing that has me keep doing these things, and how do I stop doing it? And so like that's really where my work is and what I get to do in my life. It's a blessing, and I'm very, very lucky to do it.
And we're so lucky to have you do what you do, because you're helping so many people. So
you.
tell us, for everybody that wants to reach out, who can reach out to you and where can we find you?
Yeah. I would say anybody who resonated with this, if you're like, I know that I just want to get out of my own way, send me a DM on any of the socials, which is at Jana Stern Healer. Send me a DM with the word choice. And if you do, we will connect. We will talk about all the ways that you can choose better and have a better reality going forward. You can visit my website, which is janastern, JANASTERN.com. And you can check out my podcast. It's called I'm Really Into That Stuff. It's fun conversations with me and my friends who I adore, who are into all the weird and woo and wacky stuff that I love. Yeah, that's how you can find me. This was so lovely. Thank you so much for having me, Sabrina.